The quiet man with a secret. The evening was cold, but the theater burned with noise. Laughter echoed from golden walls, bouncing like wild sparks through the air. People leaned forward in their velvet seats, sipping wine, whispering, waiting for the main act to begin. Some were excited, others were already mocking, but no one expected the man who walked out on stage. Keanu Reeves stepped into the spotlight wearing a plain black shirt and jeans. No makeup, no microphone headset, no crew member guiding him. He looked calm, maybe too calm. He held an old guitar, the kind with scratches on its side and a worn leather strap. The crowd blinked, some even chuckled. "What's he doing here?" Someone whispered near the front. "He's an actor, not a singer," another replied, rolling her eyes. The MC hadn't announced him. There was no fanfare, no flashing lights. The orchestra in the pit looked confused. Still, Keanu stood there, his fingers quietly checking the strings like it was just another Sunday morning. The curtain behind him swayed slightly, as if the whole building was holding its breath. A few people clapped awkwardly, then someone near the back laughed out loud. It wasn't kind laughter. It was the sound of disbelief, sharp, mocking, and full of arrogance. "He's gonna sing? Is this a joke?" The man laughed again, louder this time, hoping others would join. Keanu didn't flinch. He just looked out at the sea of faces. Then, with eyes full of something old and broken, something heavy, he sat down on the edge of the stage and looked at the guitar like it held a memory. Something personal, something buried. No lights changed, no dramatic music played. But something shifted in the room. The laughter faded. The theater was now quiet. People leaned in. Not because they respected him yet, but because they were curious. Because even mockery needs attention. And then he spoke, voice low and rough. "This song is for someone who never got to hear it." His fingers moved across the strings, slowly at first, then smoother. The melody was simple, haunting, and strangely familiar. Like something your mother might have hummed long ago when she thought you were asleep. No one had heard him sing before. Not like this. No movies, no interviews, no secret albums. Yet his voice, broken, raw, honest, filled the hall like it had always belonged there. Each word came not from a perfect throat, but from a shattered place behind the ribs. It wasn't professional, it wasn't polished, but it was real. Painfully real. The crowd didn't know what to do with that. Some looked down, suddenly ashamed of laughing. Others froze, holding back tears they didn't understand. In the front row, a woman clenched her wine glass until her knuckles turned white. Her son had died 2 years ago. She had promised him she'd stay strong. Tonight, something inside her cracked. In the balcony, a teenager who had been thinking of ending his life the next morning now leaned forward, heart pounding, suddenly unsure of everything. Keanu kept singing, not just one song, but 3, each more personal than the last. Stories of grief, of silence, of love that didn't get to say goodbye. And in between the songs, he told pieces of his life, not with pride or ego, but like someone opening an old drawer and showing strangers the things they had hidden away. Stories about his sister's illness, about the friend he had lost in an accident, about being lonely even when surrounded by thousands. He didn't try to be inspirational. He didn't talk like a celebrity. He just shared pain. And somehow, in doing that, he created a kind of warmth. The audience didn't move. No one was laughing now. No one was even breathing too loud. An hour passed like 5 minutes, and when he stood up to leave, Keanu didn't bow. He didn't wave. He just nodded once and walked off stage, guitar still in hand. For a long moment, there was only silence. Then someone stood up, then another, and another. Not a standing ovation filled with claps and whistles, but one filled with respect. Quiet, powerful respect. In that moment, The crowd didn't see a movie star. They saw a man who had bled on the stage, not with wounds, but with words. And many of them, for the first time in their lives, felt seen. The voices behind the curtain. Keanu didn't go back to a dressing room. He walked straight down the hall, away from the glowing lights and polished floors, to a small side door that led outside. The cold night air hit his face like a quiet reminder. He was still here, still breathing, still carrying everything no one else saw. He leaned against the brick wall and looked up at the sky. Stars blinked above, far and silent, like the eyes of old friends watching from a place he could no longer reach. Inside, the theater was still buzzing. People spoke in low voices, some wiping tears, others still confused by what they had just witnessed. No one had expected him to take the stage, not the organizers, not the audience, not even the staff backstage. And backstage, it was chaos. Who let him on? A woman hissed, holding a clipboard like it was a shield. That was not on the schedule. A young stagehand, barely out of college, looked nervous. He said he didn't need a slot, just 5 minutes, said it was personal. I didn't think he'd... You let Keanu Reeves hijack a sold-out charity gala? He didn't hijack it, came a quiet voice. It was one of the senior musicians, an old man who had played cello in dozens of concerts. He gave it meaning. No, one answered him. Farther backstage, a boy in a suit sat alone. He had been the headliner, a rising pop star, trained and polished, ready to impress. But when Keanu walked on and sang, the boy froze. His set was cancelled. No one even asked if he wanted to go next. And strangely, he didn't mind, because in those songs, he had heard something he never found in his studio sessions. Truth. Real truth. The kind that makes your chest feel heavy, like you're holding someone else's tears, outside. Keanu was still, standing by the wall. A soft sound made him turn. A girl stood there, maybe 16, with short hair and sleeves pulled over her hands. She didn't speak at first, just stared at him like he was something out of a storybook. I saw you, she said finally. He gave her a gentle nod. Thanks for staying. She stepped closer. I didn't come for the show. I was just passing by. I saw the lights. I snuck in through the side door. I thought it'd be warm inside. I didn't even know you'd be there. Keanu smiled, the kind that doesn't reach the eyes but still holds kindness. Was it warm? Only when you sang. She didn't look like someone who belonged to that world. No fancy dress, no expensive perfume. She looked tired. Too tired for someone so young. What's your name? He asked softly. Lena. You hungry, Lena? She hesitated, then nodded. Keanu didn't ask more questions. He just opened the door behind him and led her through the empty hallway, past doors with golden nameplates, until they reached a quiet lounge where leftover food waited under silver lids. He found her a plate, warm pasta, some bread, a bottle of water. She sat and ate slowly, watching him. Finally, she asked, "Why did you sing that song? Who was it for?" He didn't answer right away. His hand touched the edge of the table, fingers tracing an invisible shape. "It was for someone I loved," he said. "Someone who never got to hear me say goodbye." Lena nodded. She understood. Too well. "My brother," she whispered. "He was supposed to take me to this concert, but he never made it. I thought I'd just come anyway." A quiet silence settled between them. Not uncomfortable, not empty, just quiet. Then Lena did something strange. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a small folded paper. It was a song. Her brother had written it months before. He had dreamed of performing it on a big stage. He wanted to sing it, she said, but he was too scared. Keanu unfolded the paper. The lyrics were raw, unpolished, but they were beautiful, full of hope and sorrow and the kind of love only siblings understand. He read it twice, then said, "I'll sing it." Her eyes widened. "You don't have to." "No," he said. "I want to." That night, after the guests had all left, the stage was dark again. Only a single spotlight remained. The janitors were sweeping. The staff was packing cables. But Keanu stepped into the center once more, and with Lena sitting quietly in the front row, her arms wrapped around herself, he began to sing her brother's song. He didn't change the words. He didn't fix the melody. He sang it exactly as it was, broken, messy, honest. And for Lena, it felt like her brother was alive again. Just for a moment, just long enough to let go. When he finished, he sat beside her. Neither of them spoke, but both of them smiled. Outside, the stars still blinked. And somewhere far beyond the city, another boy who had been too scared to sing was finally heard. Whispers in the morning, the next morning, something strange began to happen. Keanu didn't post anything online. There was no press release, no statement. But stories started to spread. Quiet at first, like a breeze before a storm. Guests who had been there couldn't stop talking about the night. They didn't talk about the celebrities or the gala itself. They talked about him. About how Keanu Reeves walked onto a stage without warning, held a guitar like it was a memory, and turned a concert into something unforgettable. A short video clip appeared on social media, filmed by someone in the upper balcony. The quality was grainy. The sound wasn't perfect, but it didn't matter. The emotion cut through like a knife. His voice trembling and raw, singing a line that echoed through the silence. This song is for someone who never got to hear. It millions watched, millions shared, and slowly comments poured in. I don't know why, but this made me cry. I was about to give up, then I heard this. Thank you, Keanu, for reminding us what real feels like. Somewhere in the sea of messages, Lena left her own. That was my brother's song. He was afraid no one would ever hear it. Thank you for making it real. By noon, news channels picked up the story. They called it a spontaneous performance, a moment of emotional courage. Reporters wanted interviews. Radio hosts debated whether celebrities should be doing more like this. Some called it brave. Others didn't understand it. But everyone agreed on one thing. It moved people. Keanu didn't respond. He didn't appear on talk shows. He didn't accept invites to morning interviews. Instead, he visited a quiet music shop on the edge of the city. The store owner, a kind, old man with thick glasses, lit up when he saw him. "You still remember this place?" Keanu smiled. "Hard to forget the only store that ever fixed my mother's cassette player without asking for payment." They shook hands like old friends. Keanu walked through the rows of instruments, his fingers brushing old strings, tapping worn wood. In the far corner, he found a small guitar with carvings along the edge. Not expensive, not flashy, just full of soul. "How much for this one?" The owner waved his hand. "Take it. You gave my granddaughter hope last night." Keanu paused. "She was there?" "She's been silent for months," the man said softly, "since her mother passed. Last night, she came home and said, 'Grandpa, I think I want to play again.'" Keanu didn't say a word. He just gently picked up the guitar, tucked it under his arm, and left a generous donation on the counter before walking out. Meanwhile, Lena was still holding on to something bigger than herself. She hadn't gone back to the shelter yet. Instead, she walked the city in a daze, unsure what to feel. Her brother's voice, his words, had echoed through a theater filled with strangers. And somehow, that sound still lived in her chest. She passed a small park and saw a group of kids huddled around a speaker. They were watching the clip of Keanu's performance, not scrolling, not laughing, just watching. And for the first time, in a long while, she felt like she wasn't invisible. A woman sitting on a bench nearby looked up. "You were there, weren't you?" Lena nodded slowly. The woman's eyes filled with tears. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that song. Lena didn't know what to say, but something inside her began to change. A warmth she thought had died long ago began to glow again. By evening, Keanu was back at his small home. He made tea, fed the stray cat that always waited near his door, and sat by the window, watching the city lights flicker like tiny promises. His phone buzzed. It was a message from someone he hadn't spoken to in years. An old friend from the industry, once a rising star, now forgotten by most. The message was simple. I saw you sing. I've been drinking again. Haven't picked up a guitar in 2 years. But after last night, I wrote a verse. Thank you, man. Thank you for reminding me why I started. Keanu read it 3 times, then placed the phone down and looked out at the night. He hadn't done it for attention. He hadn't done it to go viral. He did it because pain, when hidden too long, becomes a weight no soul can carry. And sometimes, the only way to heal is to sing it out loud. The song that wouldn't stop the next day began like any other, but it didn't stay that way. By sunrise, Keanu's performance had already reached millions more. The clip had been reposted across every platform, translated into multiple languages, and stitched into emotional tributes by strangers who had never even met him. It wasn't just about the fame. It was about feeling something again. Raw, real, unfiltered feeling in a world that had forgotten how to be still. But while others called it a viral moment, for Keanu, it was something else. It was a door, one that had stayed closed for far too long. He sat in his small kitchen, the old guitar now resting beside him like an old friend who knew too much. The morning light touched the table where a notebook lay open, the same notebook he hadn't written in since the funeral. It still had her handwriting in the margins, little notes, memories, reminders to buy cat food, reminders to say I love you before leaving the house. He stared at the page for a long time, then slowly picked up a pen. The words came quietly at first, hesitant, like a voice trembling through the dark. But they came. They came because of Lena. They came because of her brother's song. They came because that night on the stage had reminded him of something he thought he had lost forever. The power of truth, spoken out loud, even if it shakes. Meanwhile, something strange was happening around the world. A man in Argentina who hadn't spoken to his father in 12 years sat down at a piano and recorded a short song titled Forgiveness. He posted it with a caption that said, I saw Keanu Reeves sing with nothing but pain in his eyes. Now I understand what silence costs. A teacher in Japan brought her students into the gym and told them to write one thing they were afraid to say out loud. At the end of class, she sat down, held up her phone, and played the video. 20 children cried that day. Not because they were sad, but because they finally felt something again. A soldier stationed in a cold desert outpost in Afghanistan uploaded a shaky video of himself singing a lullaby his mother used to hum. The caption was simple. I haven't sung in 10 years. Thank you, Keanu. None of these people knew each other, but all of them were singing now. Some in perfect tune, some with broken voices, but each note was real. Keanu didn't see all of it, but he felt it. The energy in the air had changed. When he went for a quiet walk downtown, people didn't swarm him. They didn't scream or shove phones in his face. Instead, they approached with tears, with quiet nods, with small pieces of paper, poems, lyrics, names of loved ones lost. This was written by my son before he passed, a man said, handing Keanu a folded letter. My daughter used to sing this every morning, a woman whispered, placing a tiny music box in his hand. Each gift was sacred. Keanu took them all with the care of someone holding broken glass. And that night, he laid them on the floor of his apartment, one by one, reading through tears he no longer tried to hide. He picked up his guitar again, and this time, he sang their songs. He sang one for a boy in France who never got to play his first concert. He sang one for a girl in Kenya who wrote lyrics in the dirt because she had no paper. He sang one for a mother in Ohio who never got to say goodbye to her son. Each time he finished, he looked up and whispered, "That one was for you." And slowly, a plan began to form in his mind, not for a concert, not for a tour, but for something more human, something deeper, something that could heal. A traveling stage. A simple one. No lights, no promotion, no press, just a guitar, a mic, a place for people to come, sit, and sing their truths. No judgment, no expectations, just space. Safe space. A week later, the idea went live. He didn't post it from an official page. He wrote it by hand, took a photo, and uploaded it with a caption. If you've lost someone, if you've written a song in the dark, if you've been too afraid to sing, come. This stage is for you. I'll be there. I'll listen. The message exploded. Venues offered space for free. Volunteers signed up to help organize. Even small towns that had never hosted a celebrity begged to be part of the journey. People didn't just want to watch anymore. They wanted to belong. Back in her shelter, Lena read the post on an old phone someone had donated. Her hands shook. She had never spoken in front of people before. But now, the world was listening. Maybe, just maybe, her voice was ready. 2. A stage for the broken. The town was small. It didn't have fancy hotels or glowing billboards. There was no red carpet, no news vans parked outside. Just a wide field, some folding chairs, and a stage made from wooden crates and local effort. Someone hung string lights above the platform. Others brought hot tea, blankets, and umbrellas, just in case the clouds above changed their mood. They didn't expect a star. They expected silence. But they got something else. Keanu Reeves walked onto that makeshift stage just after sunset, wearing a gray hoodie, worn jeans, and carrying the guitar people now recognized across the world. No spotlight, no fanfare, just him, and the weight of 1,000 stories folded into his heart. The crowd, a mix of locals, travelers, and people who drove for hours just to sit in the cold, greeted him not with cheers, but quiet respect. They had come not for a show, but for healing. Keanu adjusted the mic stand slowly. His voice, when it came, was gentle. "This isn't about me," he said. "This is about you." He pointed to the open mic stand beside him. "This is your stage." And with that, he stepped aside. For a moment, no one moved. Then a young woman, barely in her 20s, hair tied back, hands trembling, stepped forward. She held a notebook. Her voice shook. "I wrote this after my father left," she whispered. "I never showed it to anyone." Keanu nodded from the edge of the stage. "We're listening." She began to read, not sing, not perform, just read. Every word cracked, some barely audible, but no one moved, no one laughed, no one judged. And when she finished, she looked down, then up, and smiled with a relief that only comes after carrying pain too long. The crowd clapped softly, not for perfection, but for bravery. After her came an old man, then a teenage boy, with a guitar too big for his hands, then a mother who sang the lullaby she used to hum to her daughter before cancer took her away. Each story was like a breath, painful, honest, healing. Keanu never took center stage that night. He sat quietly, sometimes strumming along, sometimes walking down to hug someone after their song, sometimes crying in silence with them. This wasn't about being famous. This was about feeling again. A journalist who came to cover the event wrote in her notebook, "He doesn't shine because he's a star. He shines because he lets others glow." Toward the end of the night, as the wind picked up and people pulled jackets tighter, a familiar voice called out from behind the tent. "Can I try?" It was Lena. Her voice wasn't loud, but it cut through the night like light. Keanu turned. He hadn't seen her since that first night. He smiled, stepped forward, and gently guided her to the stage. "I don't have a song," she said nervously, "but I have a voice now. And that's enough, right?" Keanu nodded. "Always." She looked at the crowd. They weren't strangers anymore. They were survivors, just like her. And then she spoke. Not about her brother's death. Not about her years in the shelter. But about hope. About finding it again when she thought it was gone. "You don't have to be perfect to be heard," she said. "You just have to be brave enough to speak." The crowd stood, not in applause, but in quiet unity. Because in that moment, everyone knew. They weren't alone anymore. Keanu helped her down from the stage, his eyes misted but proud. They sat side by side on the edge of the platform as the last song of the night played, sung by a young boy with no shoes, no training, but a heart too big for words. When it ended, the silence that followed was soft and warm, a silence full of healing. Keanu looked out over the crowd, the lights dimming, the field glowing with candles and stories now set free. He whispered, This is what music was always meant to be." The echo that changed everything. The van was quiet. Keanu sat in the passenger seat, watching the trees pass by under a pale sky. Beside him, Lena leaned against the window, her eyes closed but her mind wide awake. Behind them, in the back, was the guitar. The same one that had been carried from city to city, field to field, stage to stage, a silent witness to hundreds of stories no one else had dared to tell. They had been traveling for 3 weeks. Each stop brought new faces, new voices, new pain and healing. A boy who stuttered sang without fear. A woman who had lost her entire family in a fire read her late husband's unfinished song. A former prisoner rapped about forgiveness while his mother wept in the front row. Keanu never made it about himself. He sat. He listened. He clapped. He cried. Sometimes he sang, but only when silence asked him to. The movement had grown beyond him now. People began to call it the echo stage. Not because it echoed sound, but because it echoed truth in a quiet town near the mountains. Something unexpected happened. They had planned to host the next event in a public square. But when they arrived, they found the space full of protesters, signs, cameras, loud voices. "Go home, Hollywood. We don't want your sadness show." "This isn't real. It's just another act." It wasn't the first time critics had spoken. Some believed it was fake. Others couldn't understand why people would gather just to cry and sing about pain. But this was different. This was louder, angrier. Lena flinched. "Maybe we shouldn't do it here," she said softly. Keanu looked at her, calm as ever. "Do you remember your first time?" She nodded slowly. "You were scared," he said. "But you still walked up, because someone needed to hear you. Tonight someone else is waiting, and if we don't show up, they'll think their voice doesn't matter." He stepped out of the van, walked straight into the square, and sat down on the edge of the fountain with his guitar. He didn't argue. He didn't explain. He just played. One soft chord, then another, a simple melody, the one from the very first night, the one he played when the world still laughed. He sang quietly, not to win, not to prove, just to remind. Slowly, the protesters grew quiet. Some left, some stayed. One woman who had held a sign against him lowered it to the ground and sat cross-legged in front of him, tears falling without permission. Behind her, others followed, and by the end of the night, the protest had become another concert, another circle of strangers, brought together by sound and sorrow. A week later, something extraordinary happened. A large music foundation, one known for sponsoring global talent, contacted Keanu. They wanted to fund the Echo Stage, set up permanent spaces in cities around the world where people could come, sing, and Be heard, no auditions, no judges, just safe stages. Keanu read the proposal, then smiled. He asked one question. Can we keep it human? They promised they would. 6 months later, echo stages appeared in 15 countries. School children used them to sing about stress and exams. War survivors used them to cry in harmony. Even elderly men who had never sung a note in public found themselves standing before gentle crowds, sharing songs that had been buried for decades. And in the center of it all, Keanu kept traveling, quietly, humbly, reminding people that healing doesn't need permission. It just needs a place to begin. On the anniversary of his first performance, they returned to the same theater, the same velvet seats, the same balcony where someone once laughed. This time, it was full again. But the laughter had changed. It wasn't cruel. It was warm. Lena stood on the stage that night, holding the same notebook her brother had written in. She read a new poem, one she had written with him, in her dreams, in her memories, in the space between pain and hope. When she finished, she looked at Keanu and whispered, "Thank you." He shook his head. "You did this. I just listened." And then he sang. One final song. Not for the crowd, not for the cameras, but for her, for Lena, for her brother, for everyone who had ever been afraid to speak. The last chord rang through the theater. No one clapped. They just stood, in silence, together, strong, alive, heard.